Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso, 1881–1973, was a renowned Spanish artist who excelled in painting, sculpture, printmaking, ceramics, and theatre design. Along with Georges Braque, he co-founded the Cubist movement, pioneered constructed sculpture, played a role in the development of collage, and explored a diverse range of artistic styles. Picasso was born in the city of Malaga, Andalusia, in southern Spain. He showed exceptional artistic talent from an early age and began formal art training under his father, who was an art professor. The artist quickly surpassed his father's abilities and enrolled in advanced classes at the Royal Academy of San Fernando in Madrid, when he was just 15 years old. In 1901, he moved to Paris, the center of the art world at the time. Pablo Picasso went through several distinct artistic periods throughout his career, each marked by unique styles, themes, and influences. Blue Period, 1901–1904. Picasso's Blue Period, which lasted from 1901 to 1904, is one of the most distinctive and influential phases in his artistic career. During this period, Picasso's paintings were dominated by shades of blue and blue-green, and his artworks often depicted themes of poverty, despair, and isolation. Picasso spent a significant amount of time in Barcelona and Paris, where he encountered the poverty-stricken individuals living on the fringes of society. He was touched by their struggles and often portrayed beggars, drunks, the old, and the frail, reflecting the somber atmosphere of this period. The Blue Period was characterized by a melancholic and introspective mood, reflecting Picasso's own emotional state and the social and political context of the time. Rose Period, 1904 to 1906. Picasso's Rose Period, which spanned from 1904 to 1906, marked a distinct shift in his artistic style and subject matter after the somber Blue Period. Picasso's paintings were characterized by warmer tones, predominantly shades of pink and rose, hence the name Rose Period. The artworks often featured circus performers, acrobats, harlequins, and other theatrical characters, reflecting a more cheerful and optimistic mood compared to the earlier Blue Period. Picasso spent significant time in Paris during the Rose Period, where he was exposed to the vibrant artistic and cultural milieu of the city. The artist was inspired by French art, literature, and popular entertainment of the time, including the cabaret and circus performances. Artists like Henri Toulouse-Lautrec and the French symbolists had an impact on his work, encouraging him to explore themes related to the circus and theatrical life. The Rose Period remains a significant chapter in Picasso's artistic journey, showcasing his ability to capture both the melancholic and joyful aspects of the human experience. African Art and Primitivism, 1907 to 1909. The Rose Period eventually gave way to Picasso's African and Iberian art-inspired period between 1907 and 1909, leading to the development of Cubism, a groundbreaking artistic movement co-founded by Picasso and Georges Braque. Picasso, along with other avant-garde artists of his time, became fascinated with African tribal art. They were captivated by the expressive forms, geometric shapes, and symbolic meanings found in African masks, sculptures, and artifacts. Picasso, in particular, admired the abstraction and distortion of human figures in African art, which challenged conventional Western notions of representation. In addition to African art, Picasso was also influenced by the ancient Iberian art of the Iberian Peninsula, with their simple and bold shapes. Picasso and his contemporaries were also deeply influenced by primitivism. The term primitivism refers to the romanticization of non-Western cultures and the belief that these so-called primitive societies possessed a purity, authenticity, and directness lacking in Western civilization. During this period, Picasso's paintings and sculptures began to incorporate elements inspired by African and Iberian art. Geometric shapes. Picasso adopted the angular and geometric forms found in African and Iberian sculptures. He started to deconstruct and distort the human figure, breaking it down into simplified geometric shapes and sharp angles. Mask-like faces. Picasso's figures began to resemble masks, with flattened and exaggerated facial features. Eyes, noses, and mouths were often depicted as if seen from multiple viewpoints simultaneously, reflecting the influence of African masks. Bold outlines. Thick, bold outlines and dark contours became prominent in Picasso's work, emphasizing the delineation of forms and contributing to the overall sense of abstraction. One of the most famous artworks from this period is Picasso's painting titled Les Demoiselles Avignon. This groundbreaking painting depicts 5 nude figures with mask-like faces and distorted bodies, showcasing the influence of African and Iberian art. Les Demoiselles Avignon is considered a pivotal work in the history of modern art, as it challenged traditional artistic conventions and paved the way for the development of Cubism. Picasso's exploration of African art and primitivism laid the foundation for his later collaboration with Georges Braque and the co-creation of Cubism, an innovative and revolutionary art movement that completely transformed the way artists approached representation and abstraction in the early 20th century. Analytic Cubism, 1909 to 1912. Analytic Cubism is a style of art that was developed by Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque between 1909 and 1912. It is considered the first phase of the Cubist movement, which was a revolutionary approach to representing reality in art. Analytic Cubism is characterized by the artist's analytical deconstruction and reassembly of objects and figures into geometric shapes, emphasizing the two-dimensional nature of the canvas and challenging traditional perspective and representation. In analytic cubism, objects and figures are broken down into geometric shapes such as cubes, spheres, and cones. These shapes are fragmented and rearranged, depicting the subject from multiple viewpoints at once. There is often use of monochromatic palette dominated by earthy tones, browns, grays, and blacks. This subdued color scheme allows viewers to focus on the form and structure rather than color. Objects and figures are depicted in a complex and fragmented manner, making it challenging for the viewer to identify the subject immediately. This ambiguity is intentional, as it encourages viewers to engage with the artwork and decipher the fragmented shapes. Picasso's interest in African and Iberian art is evident in analytic cubism. He was inspired by the geometric shapes and expressive qualities of African masks and Iberian sculptures, which influenced the development of Cubist style. Analytic cubism laid the foundation for later phases of the Cubist movement, such as synthetic cubism, which incorporated collage elements and a more vibrant color palette. Picasso's contributions to analytic cubism, along with Braque and other artists of the time, revolutionized the way artists approached representation, leading to a significant shift in the course of art history. Synthetic Cubism, 1912 to 1919. In the synthetic cubist period, Picasso, along with Braque, developed a new approach to cubism. Unlike the earlier analytic cubism, which deconstructed forms into fragmented shapes and analyzed them from multiple viewpoints, synthetic cubism focused on simplifying and synthesizing forms using flat shapes and bright colors. Synthetic cubist phase introduced a broader range of colors into their artworks. Bright hues, often in flat and non-naturalistic tones, were used to depict different elements within the composition. The artists, in this period, created collages by incorporating real-life materials, such as newspaper clippings, wallpapers and objects, into their artworks. These collaged elements added texture, depth, and a sense of everyday reality to the compositions. Despite the incorporation of real-world elements, synthetic cubist artworks continued to simplify and abstract forms. Objects and figures were still broken down into geometric shapes, but these shapes were now more defined, often outlined in bold black lines, and filled with various textures and patterns. Picasso and Braque explored different techniques to create textures within the compositions. They used a variety of materials, such as sand, sawdust, or even glue, to add texture to the painted surfaces. This interplay of textures added a tactile quality to the artworks. One of Picasso's notable synthetic cubist works is the collage painting Still Life with Chair Caning. In this artwork, Picasso incorporated a piece of oilcloth with a chair caning pattern, along with painted elements, creating a mixed media composition that blurred the lines between painting and sculpture. Picasso and Braque's innovative techniques during this period had a significant impact on the development of modern art. Neoclassicism and Surrealism, 1919 to 1929. Between 1919 and 1929, Pablo Picasso explored two distinct yet influential artistic movements, Neoclassicism and Surrealism. In the aftermath of World War I, Picasso moved away from the abstract and cubist styles he had developed earlier and turned towards a more classical and traditional approach. This period, known as Neoclassicism, 1919 to 1924, was characterized by a return to classical forms and themes. Picasso focused on more realistic and figurative representations of the human form. He painted classical themes such as mythological scenes, bathers, and portraits, often employing classical composition and idealized forms. The artworks of this period often featured warm and earthy tones, moving away from the bold colors of Picasso's earlier Cubist and synthetic Cubist phases. In the late 1920s, Picasso transitioned into Surrealism, 1925 to 1929, a movement which was characterized by exploring the subconscious mind, dreams, and irrationality. While Picasso was never a formal member of the Surrealist group, his work during this period exhibited Surrealist tendencies. During this time, his paintings often featured distorted and dreamlike figures, merging reality and fantasy. Picasso also incorporated elements of automatism, a technique where the artist allows their subconscious mind to guide their hand, creating spontaneous and experimental compositions. The period 1930 to 1939. The period between 1930 and 1939 was a significant time in Pablo Picasso's artistic career. One of the notable aspects of this period was his exploration of Surrealism, a movement that was gaining prominence in the art world. In the early 1930s, Picasso's work began to reflect a more classical and traditional style, characterized by a return to more representational forms. However, as the decade progressed, he became increasingly interested in the surrealistic movement, which was marked by dreamlike and fantastical imagery, often depicting distorted and abstracted figures. One of Picasso's iconic works from this period is the painting Guernica, created in 1937. This powerful and large-scale mural portrays the horrors of the Spanish Civil War, particularly the bombing of the town of Guernica by German and Italian air forces supporting General Francisco Franco's nationalist forces. The painting is characterized by its monochromatic palette and fragmented, distorted figures, reflecting the chaos and tragedy of war. Guernica is considered one of Picasso's most important works and a powerful anti-war statement. Apart from Guernica, Picasso created numerous other artworks during the 1930s, experimenting with different styles and themes. He also continued his exploration of Cubism, a movement he co-founded, although his approach to Cubism became more refined and less radical during this period. In addition to painting, Picasso also worked on sculptures, ceramics, and prints during the 1930s, showcasing his versatility as an artist. World War II in the late 1940s, 1939 to 1949. During World War II in the late 1940s, 1939 to 1949, Pablo Picasso, like many artists of his time, lived through a period of political upheaval and personal challenges. The war, the occupation of France by Nazi forces, and the aftermath deeply affected Picasso's life and art. Picasso, a Spanish citizen, chose to remain in France during the war, even though he was not required to do so. Despite the difficult circumstances, Picasso continued to create art during the war years. His work during this time often reflected the somber mood of the period. He produced paintings, drawings, and sculptures, although the scarcity of art supplies and the constraints of the war had an impact on the materials he could use. After the liberation of Paris in 1944, Picasso became an active member of the French Communist Party. He embraced communist ideology and his art took on more overtly political themes, reflecting his commitment to social justice and political activism. In the post-war years, Picasso's work began to reflect a sense of hope and optimism as Europe sought to rebuild after the devastation of the war. His art became more colorful, and he experimented with different styles and techniques, including ceramics and lithography. He transitioned into a style known as lyrical abstraction, incorporating brighter colors and more fluid forms into his work. Picasso also started to incorporate classical elements into his paintings and sculptures, displaying a synthesis of his earlier avant-garde styles with more traditional and classical aesthetics. One of the notable works from this period is the series of lithographs titled The Bulls. In these lithographs, Picasso explored the theme of the bull, a motif that had appeared frequently in his earlier works. The series is characterized by bold and expressive lines, capturing the strength and vitality of the bull, and reflecting Picasso's fascination with this powerful animal. Post-war works and final years, 1949 to 1973, the period from 1949 until his death in 1973, Picasso continued to evolve as an artist, exploring various styles, techniques, and mediums, leaving behind a vast body of work that showcased his innovative spirit and artistic mastery. He embraced ceramics and sculpture, creating innovative and imaginative pieces. His late works were characterized by a return to more classical themes, but he approached them with a unique and modern perspective. Picasso became increasingly interested in printmaking, particularly lithography. He created numerous lithographs, etchings, and linocuts, showcasing his skills in this medium. His graphic works from this period are highly regarded for their innovation and artistic quality. In the 1960s, Picasso returned to Cubism, a movement he co-founded, in his own unique way. He combined elements of late Cubism with influences from popular culture, incorporating everyday objects and imagery into his artworks. This period showcased his adaptability and willingness to experiment with new ideas. Picasso remained incredibly productive until his death in 1973, continued to work on paintings, sculptures, and drawings with remarkable energy and enthusiasm. His later works often displayed a sense of introspection and contemplation, reflecting the wisdom and maturity of an artist who had lived through and influenced numerous artistic movements. One of the notable works from Picasso's later years is the painting Self-Portrait Facing Death, 1972, which is considered a poignant reflection on mortality. In this painting, Picasso depicted himself with a skeletal face, a representation of his awareness of his own mortality as he approached the end of his life. Pablo Picasso left behind an extraordinary artistic legacy that continues to inspire and captivate audiences around the world. His artworks reflect a lifetime of artistic innovation, creativity, and a relentless pursuit of artistic expression, making him one of the most enduring and influential artists in the history of art. Pablo Picasso. The Blind Man's Meal. The artwork, created in 1903, currently resides within the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The painting portrays a somber, solitary scene, depicting a blind man. The central focus on the blind man struggling to find a jug with one hand while clutching bread in the other is a powerful symbol of the challenges faced by those living in poverty and dealing with physical suffering. Despite the bleak subject matter, Picasso manages to convey a sense of dignity amidst the struggle. The composition of the painting emphasizes the man's vulnerability and the harshness of his existence. The dark, heavy brushstrokes and the lack of vibrant colors evoke a sense of despair and isolation. Despite the bleak subject matter, Picasso's technical skill and emotional depth are evident in the painting. The Blind Man's Meal is a powerful example of Picasso's ability to convey complex emotions and social matters through his art. Picasso crafted this painting during his Blue period. This period, which lasted from 1901 to 1904, was characterized by a predominance of blue and blue-green tones in Picasso's work, reflecting themes of poverty, isolation, and melancholy. During this time, Picasso often depicted beggars, the elderly, and the blind, reflecting his empathy for the less fortunate and his concern for social issues. In conclusion, The Blind Man's Meal is a powerful and emotional artwork that not only showcases Picasso's technical ability but also serves as a poignant commentary on societal challenges and the resilience of the human spirit. Through the lens of the Blue period, the painting remains a lasting testament to Picasso's commitment to addressing social issues through his artistic creations. Pablo Picasso. The Old Guitarist. The painting, housed in the Art Institute of Chicago, USA, was created by Picasso between 1903 and 1904, during his blue period. This renowned artwork portrays a blind elderly man with white hair and a beard, sitting distorted and cross-legged, playing his guitar on the streets of Barcelona, Spain. The artwork is characterized by its monochromatic blue palette, flattened forms, which adds to the overall sense of sadness and despair. The use of blue tones intensifies the emotional impact of the artwork, emphasizing the old man's sense of isolation and destitution. The focal point of the painting is the large, brown guitar, representing the guitarist's world and his sole hope for survival. Despite his hardships, the musician finds solace in his music, symbolizing the power of art to provide comfort amidst life's challenges. During this period, Picasso drew inspiration from post-impressionist and symbolist artists like Edvard Munch and Paul Gauguin. The elongated figure of the blind musician reflects Picasso's fascination with Spanish art, particularly the work of El Greco. Additionally, Picasso's own experiences, including poverty and the suicide of a close friend, led him to empathize with society's outcasts, shaping his blue period from 1901 to 1904. Recent examinations of the painting have unveiled hidden figures beneath its surface. These include an old woman with her head bent forward. Another discovered figure depicts a young mother with a child. Additionally, an animal, possibly a calf or sheep, was detected on the canvas's right side, adding a new element to the composition. These findings reveal Picasso's experimental nature, showcasing his ability to explore various ideas and compositions before arriving at the final version of the old guitarist that we admire today. The old guitarist showcases Picasso's ability to convey profound human emotion through art. The melancholic depiction of the blind guitarist captures the resilience of the human spirit and the power of creativity to provide solace amidst adversity. Pablo Picasso. The Family of Saltimbanques. The Family of Saltimbanques is a renowned painting created by Pablo Picasso in 1905 during his Rose period. This masterpiece is considered one of the artist's most iconic works and is housed in the collection of the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. The painting features a group of 6 circus performers, known as saltimbanques in French, gathered together in a desolate landscape. The composition is characterized by its melancholic atmosphere and muted color palette, typical of Picasso's Rose period. The Rose period, which lasted from 1904 to 1906, was marked by softer tones and a focus on themes of circus performers, acrobats, and harlequins. Despite standing together, the saltimbanques seem static and detached, avoiding eye contact with each other. Picasso included himself as the harlequin in the painting. The figures within the group appear isolated, as if lost in their own thoughts. The painting has been interpreted in various ways by art historians and critics. Some view it as a representation of the transience and instability of the human condition, while others see it as a reflection of Picasso's personal experiences and emotions during that period of his life. The painting underwent several versions, and Picasso made significant changes not only to the figures but also to the color scheme. The original version of the painting was predominantly in shades of blue. During the course of his creative process, Picasso decided to shift the color palette to rose, infusing the painting with warmer tones. However, he allowed some of the original blue shades to show through the layers of paint as he made alterations to the composition. This technique, known as pentimento, gives viewers glimpses of the painting's earlier stages, providing insight into the artist's decision-making and artistic choices. The resulting final composition, with its dusky rose-blue palette, creates a unique and melancholic atmosphere. The warm, rosy hues combined with the lingering blue tones contribute to the overall sense of sadness and introspection in the painting. The artwork highlights Picasso's mastery as an artist, showcasing his ability to evoke deep emotions and his innovative approach to both form and color in the area of modern art. Pablo Picasso. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, The Young Ladies of Avignon. The painting, created in 1907, is currently housed in the Museum of Modern Art, New York. It is considered one of the most influential works in the development of modern art and an innovative artwork in the Cubist movement. The composition depicts 5 nude female prostitutes in a brothel on Cara de Vino, a street in Barcelona, Spain. Originally, Picasso intended to depict the women in a more traditional manner, but he eventually adopted the Cubist style, breaking down the figures into geometric shapes and abstract forms. The painting is known for its confrontational and provocative representation of the female form, challenging traditional norms and expectations. The women are depicted in a fragmented and geometric style, with sharp angles and distorted forms. The painting features a still life of fruit on crumpled fabric, reminiscent of Cézanne's work. Furthermore, it takes inspiration from another Cézanne's painting The Bathers. The left side portrays a woman in profile, her eyes drawn in a frontal manner, resembling Egyptian sculptures and Gauguin's primitivism. The central female figures with bold outlined eyes draw inspiration from medieval Spanish sculptures, while the distorted faces on the right are inspired by African and Iberian tribal masks. African art has played a significant role in shaping the angular and detached forms depicted in the artwork. In certain areas, these forms are deliberately separated from their bodies, diverging from conventional perspective and setting Cubism apart from previous artistic styles. In this context, space is constructed by the forms themselves and the gaps between them. The composition resembles a polyhedral crystal, broken into multiple levels and achieving a dense quality. Additionally, some art historians and scholars have noted similarities in the elongated and distorted figures found in both artists' works. El Greco's unique style, characterized by elongated forms and bold colors, could have influenced Picasso's experimentation with form and perspective in his groundbreaking painting. The depiction of the nude women in a raw and confrontational manner shocked the contemporary art world when it was first exhibited. The painting was initially met with controversy and criticism but later came to be recognized as a revolutionary masterpiece that reshaped the course of modern art. Pablo Picasso. Still life with chair caning. This groundbreaking artwork, created in 1912, can be found at the Picasso Museum in Paris. The painting, considered one of the first examples of collage in the history of modern art, often called synthetic cubism, and regarded as a precursor to the Cubist movement. In this innovative piece, Picasso combined traditional painting techniques with the use of collage, incorporating an actual piece of oilcloth with a chair caning pattern into the composition. Upon initial observation, Picasso's 1912 artwork Still Life with Chair Caning may seem like a collection of various shapes rather than a unified composition. To comprehend this painting, it is crucial to deconstruct the components of Cubist language. The painting features a round café table with an oilcloth attached to the canvas, showcasing the meticulously depicted wicker bottom of a chair. Starting from the upper right corner of the canvas, there is the handle of a knife. Following to the left, you'll come across the blade, and a lemon slice, portrayed in distinct geometric forms. The details of the lemon slice can be discerned at the bottom right corner of the knife's blade. Below the fruit is the white edge of a napkin. To the left of these things and in the top center of the canvas is a drinking glass. A pipe and letters from the alphabet are also integrated into the composition. The presence of the word zoo raises the possibility of it being a reference to the French term journal, signifying a newspaper. Encircling the chair is a piece of rope, cleverly shaping the illusion of a coffee table border. Additionally, the viewer is prompted to envision the table beneath the objects as transparent, crafted from glass, allowing the chair to be visible through its surface. Consequently, the painting's arrangement appears to rest upon the tangible texture of the wicker chair while being framed by another real element, the encircling rope, heightening the sense of realism within the artwork. What makes this artwork particularly innovative is the incorporation of traditional painting techniques with the use of collage, including an actual piece of oilcloth with a chair caning pattern into the composition. Picasso glued a piece of oilcloth with a chair caning pattern onto the canvas, blurring the line between two-dimensional art and three-dimensional reality, painting and sculpture. This technique was revolutionary at the time and is considered one of the earliest examples of collage in modern art. Pablo Picasso. Violin and Grapes. The artwork, created in 1912 by Picasso, is currently housed in the Museum of Modern Art, New York. The composition portrays the distinct shape of a violin at its center. Notably, one of the violin keys' helix is depicted on the side, in accordance with our typical mental image of a violin. Conversely, the speaker holes are positioned at the front, facing forward. Within the painting, the bow and strings appear to hover in an undefined space. Despite the apparent complexity and scattered forms, the composition remains remarkably organized. The artist achieved this cohesion by constructing the image from roughly equal parts, ensuring a consistent impression. Cubism's pioneers acknowledged the method's challenge: the viewer must recognize the object portrayed. Hence, Cubist painters deliberately chose familiar subjects, such as musical instruments, bottles, mugs, fruit, and occasionally human figures, to facilitate viewer comprehension. Braque introduced the technique of involving paper pieces glued to the canvas, resulting in a complete disappearance of traditional spatial perception. Over time, both artists realized they could maintain this innovative spatial concept solely through painting. They utilized flat color surfaces, creating a collage-like effect evident in this painting. In summary, Violin and Grapes exemplifies Picasso's mastery of Cubist principles, showcasing the balance between abstraction and organization, and reflecting the deliberate choices made by Cubist artists in selecting subjects to aid viewer comprehension. The painting displays the revolutionary nature of Cubism in reshaping traditional artistic representations. Pablo Picasso. Guernica. Guernica is one of Pablo Picasso's most famous and powerful works of art. Created in 1937, this composition currently resides in the Museum Reina Sofia in Madrid, Spain. The painting is named after the town of Guernica in the Basque country of Spain, which was bombed by German and Italian air forces during the Spanish Civil War. The bombing occurred on April 26, 1937, and it was a devastating attack that resulted in the destruction of the town and the loss of many civilian lives. The painting itself is a mural-sized artwork, measuring 3.5 meters, 11 feet, in height and 7.8 meters, 25.6 feet, in width. It is an oil painting on canvas and is known for its monochromatic palette of black, white, and gray tones. The lack of color intensifies the emotional impact of the painting and adds to its dramatic quality. Picasso created Guernica as a response to the bombing and as a political statement against the brutality of war. The painting was first exhibited at the Spanish Pavilion of the 1937 International Exposition in Paris and later toured around the world, raising awareness about the Spanish Civil War and the devastating impact of war on civilian populations. Guernica is a complex and multi-layered artwork that contains various elements and symbolism of subjects. The painting features distorted and anguished figures, animals, and buildings, all intertwined in a chaotic and nightmarish scene, conveying the intense pain and fear experienced during the bombing. One of the central figures in the painting is a horse, which appears to be in great distress. Its open mouth and piercing eye reflect the terror and agony of the moment. The horse, traditionally seen as a symbol of nobility, freedom, and goodness, is depicted dying in Guernica. This represents the tragic loss of innocence and goodness in the midst of conflict, emphasizing the devastating impact of war on both individuals and natural world. Another prominent figure is a bull, which is often seen as a symbol of brutality and aggression. The bull is a recurring motif in Picasso's work and is often associated with Spanish culture. In Guernica, the bull's presence emphasizes the senseless violence of war and the destructive power of aggression. Towards the left of the painting, there is a mother holding a lifeless child. The image of the mother mourning her deceased child evokes themes of maternal love, loss, and impact of war on women and children. This motif is reminiscent of the Pieta, a common artistic representation of the Virgin Mary cradling the body of the dead Christ. On the far right, there is a woman with her head thrown back in a wail of despair. Her disheveled hair and distorted features capture the profound grief experienced by those affected by the bombing. In the upper right corner of the painting, there is a woman with a lamp emitting a harsh light, illuminating the chaos below. This figure, related to the Statue of Liberty, symbolizes enlightenment, hope, and freedom. In the context of Guernica, it serves as a contrast to the surrounding darkness, representing the aspiration for peace and liberation from oppression. Adjacent to the lamp there are flames engulfing a building. These elements represent the harsh realities of war, the destructive power of technology, and the way conflict can bring both literal and metaphorical darkness. The hand tightly gripping the broken sword symbolizes heroic resistance and the determination to fight even in the face of defeat. It conveys the resilience and bravery of those who resist oppressive forces. The painting features broken swords and spears, symbolizing the futility of armed conflict. These shattered weapons suggest that violence begets destruction and leads to a cycle of suffering. In Guernica, elements of expressionism are evident in the intense emotions depicted on the faces of the figures, especially the woman crying over the deceased child and the horse with the lanceolate tongue. The distorted and anguished expressions amplify the emotional impact of the painting. Cubism, pioneered by Picasso himself, is characterized by the use of geometric shapes and fragmented forms. While Guernica is not a typical Cubist work, The influence of Cubism can be seen in the way Picasso deconstructs and distorts the figures and objects, giving them a fragmented and multifaceted appearance. Surrealism is reflected in the dreamlike and nightmarish quality of the painting. The surrealistic elements contribute to the sense of chaos and disorientation, capturing the psychological impact of war on the human psyche. By incorporating these diverse artistic influences and symbolic elements, Picasso created a multifaceted masterpiece, rich in meaning and emotion, which continues to captivate viewers around the world. Guernica continues to be a powerful and iconic symbol of anti-war sentiment and the enduring human spirit in the face of tragedy. Georges Braque. Georges Braque, 1882–1963, was a renowned French painter, sculptor, and printmaker who, along with Pablo Picasso, played a significant role in the development of Cubism, one of the most influential art movements of the 20th century. Braque's work is characterized by fragmented objects, geometric shapes, and multiple perspectives, which were hallmarks of the Cubist style. Georges Braque was born in Argenteuil, a suburb of Paris, France. He studied painting at the School of Fine Arts in Havre and later moved to Paris to continue his art education. In the early 1900s, he became friends with Pablo Picasso, and the two artists began working closely together, experimenting with new artistic styles and techniques. Throughout his career, Braque continued to innovate and explore various styles, including Fauvism, Impressionism, Cubism, and Surrealism. Braque's most significant contributions to art came during the Cubist movement. He, along with Picasso, in the period between 1908 to 1918, developed a style that involved breaking down objects into geometric shapes and depicting them from multiple viewpoints simultaneously. Braque's innovative use of collage materials significantly influenced the development of modern art, inspiring generations of artists to experiment with mixed media and unconventional materials in their work. A type of collage and collaging technique were the use of pasted papers. It is closely associated with the Cubist movement and was pioneered by Georges Braque and Pablo Picasso during the early 20th century. This technique involves the use of paper fragments, often cut or torn from newspapers, advertisements, or other printed materials, which are then pasted onto the surface of a painting or drawing. This method allowed artists like Braque and Picasso to incorporate real-world elements directly into their artwork, blurring the lines between art and everyday life. By adding these found materials to their compositions, they could introduce new textures, patterns, and colors, enriching the visual experience of the viewer. This technique also challenged traditional notions of artistic creation, as artists were no longer confined to using paint alone. The post-Cubist period of Georges Braque, spanning from 1918 to 1939, marked a significant phase in the artist's career as he transitioned away from the strict Cubist style that he had pioneered alongside Pablo Picasso. This period was characterized by a gradual shift towards a more personal and lyrical expression, incorporating elements of surrealism and abstraction while retaining some Cubist elements. During this period, Braque revisited classical themes such as still life, landscapes, and figures. However, he approached these subjects with a newfound freedom, using abstract and fragmented forms that echoed his Cubist roots. Braque's work during this period often displayed a deep connection with nature. He painted landscapes and seascapes, exploring the play of light and shadow, and capturing the essence of the natural world. Braque's work from this period also had the influence of Surrealism, a movement that was gaining prominence in the art world. He began to incorporate dreamlike elements and symbolic imagery into his paintings, blurring the line between reality and imagination. While Braque's palette remained relatively subdued compared to some other artists of his time, he started to experiment with color in more expressive ways. He used color to evoke emotions and moods, creating subtle harmonies within his compositions. In the later works of Braque, spanning from the 1940s to 1963s, his artistic style underwent several transformations while retaining his distinctive Cubist approach. Braque returned to Cubism, but in a more relaxed and lyrical manner. Nature became a prominent motif in Braque's paintings. He often depicted birds, fish, and other animals, exploring their form and movement in a Cubist context. Braque's innovative approach to art had a lasting impact on the development of modern art. He left behind a legacy of groundbreaking work that continues to inspire artists and viewers around the world. Georges Braque. Houses at L'Estaque. The artwork, crafted in 1908, currently resides in the Museum of Art, Bern. It is considered one of the pioneering works of Cubism, specifically analytical Cubism, and a significant example of Braque's early experimentation with this revolutionary art movement. Analytical Cubism was the phase of the Cubist movement, characterized by artists' exploration of fragmented forms, multiple viewpoints, and the deconstruction of objects and scenes into geometric shapes. This phase, which lasted from approximately 1908 to 1912, is marked by a monochromatic or limited color palette, often dominated by shades of gray, brown, and green. The influence of Paul Cézanne, a post-impressionist painter whom both Braque and Picasso admired greatly, is evident in this artwork. Cézanne's approach to breaking down natural forms into geometric shapes and planes had a profound impact on the development of Cubism. Braque, like Picasso, was inspired by Cézanne's technique of representing objects and landscapes as a series of geometric facets. The gray, green, and brown colors used in the painting echo the earthy palette often found in Cézanne's works, reflecting the influence of the older master. Braque depicts a landscape in the town of L'Estaque, near Marseille, France. The painting features houses, trees and mountains rendered in a fragmented, abstract manner. Traditional perspective and depth are abandoned in favor of presenting different facets of the scene simultaneously. The use of angular shapes, muted colors, and a flattened perspective creates a complex visual experience, challenging the viewer's perception of space and form. Braque's innovative approach in this painting laid the foundation for the later development of synthetic cubism, a subsequent phase in the Cubist movement, where artists incorporated collage elements and introduced brighter colors into their compositions. Analytical Cubism, with works like Houses at L'Estaque, remains a crucial period in the history of modern art, showcasing a radical departure from traditional artistic conventions. Georges Braque. The Portuguese. The painting, created in 1911, currently resides in the Kunstmuseum Basel, in Switzerland. The painting features a Portuguese musician, likely a guitarist, as the central subject. The figure is broken down into geometric shapes and fragmented forms, reflecting the influence of analytical cubism, where artists sought to represent multiple perspectives and viewpoints simultaneously. The goal was to depict the essence of the subject rather than creating a realistic representation. Analytical Cubist works often employed a limited color palette dominated by earth tones such as browns and grays. The Portuguese is no exception, and Braque used subdued colors to focus on form and structure. It was also common for Cubist works to incorporate elements like letters and numbers. These additions can be seen as a way to disrupt traditional modes of representation and introduce a sense of abstraction. Braque introduces elements reminiscent of collage techniques. The use of fragmented shapes and the layered composition echoes the visual language of collage, showcasing Braque's innovative approach to form and material. The artist, along with Picasso, was influenced by Iberian art and sculpture. The angular and geometric forms in the Portuguese reflect the artist's fascination with the stylized and primitive qualities found in Iberian sculptures. It's worth noting that Braque had a particular interest in incorporating musical themes into his Cubist works during this period. Musical instruments, including guitars and violins, were recurring motifs in his paintings. Like many Cubist works, the artwork challenges the viewer intellectually. The fragmented and abstracted forms invite the viewer to actively participate in deciphering the composition and reconstructing the figure in their mind. The Portuguese exemplifies Braque's mastery of analytic Cubism. Through the innovative deconstruction of form and the presentation of multiple viewpoints, Braque transforms the traditional representation of a figure into a dynamic composition. The painting reveals the significant impact of Cubism on artistic expression, showcasing contemporary techniques that challenged conventional norms. Georges Braque. Fruit Dish and Glass. The painting, created in 1912, currently resides in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, U.S. The painting is considered a prime example of synthetic cubism, a phase within the broader Cubist movement. Synthetic cubism is characterized by the introduction of collage elements into artworks. In Fruit Dish and Glass, Braque incorporates a technique called pasted paper fragments to create the composition, breaking away from the traditional use of paint alone. Braque's inspiration for Fruit Dish and Glass came during a visit to an Avignon shop. There, he acquired a roll of faux bois paper, which imitated oak paneling and featured two types of printed motifs on a dark beige background. This material became the foundation for his groundbreaking collage. Braque observed that the flat, realistic appearance of the paper, pasted on, undermines spatial relationships, enabling it to function as both foreground and background. In Fruit Dish and Glass, the grapes and pears in the glass are distorted yet recognizable versions of real objects. The fruit situated amidst what could be interpreted as a dish, a wine glass, or even a candlestick. Braque employed textures, shapes, and composition to create a painting that straddles the line between recognition and symbolism. Braque likely initiated the creative process by using cut pieces of wallpaper on a flat surface to conceptualize his composition. Two vertical strips of wood grain wallpaper may have been strategically placed on a large sheet of white paper to depict cafe walls, with a small horizontal piece at the bottom representing a tabletop. Using charcoal, he sketched the glass, pears, grapes, and incorporated the words ale and bar, while adding black ink lines to enhance the wallpaper. A circular knob on the lower piece of wallpaper contributed to the illusion of a table drawer. The introduction of collage techniques by Braque and Picasso had a lasting impact on the art world. It opened up new possibilities for artistic expression and paved the way for the development of various art forms, including Dadaism and Surrealism. The work showcases the innovative spirit of the early 20th century art movements and the transformative power of breaking away from established norms. Georges Braque. Violin and Candlestick. The painting, created in 1910, currently resides in the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, U.S. The artwork reflects the artist's deconstruction of objects, such as the violin and candlestick, into geometric forms and the simultaneous presentation of multiple viewpoints. The canvas is divided into a series of intersecting and overlapping geometric planes, creating a sense of depth and complexity. This technique allows Braque to represent the subject from various aspects at the same time. Braque employs a limited color palette, focusing primarily on earthy tones such as browns, grays, and muted greens. This subdued color scheme contributes to the overall sense of unity and coherence in the composition. Braque was known for introducing collage elements into his paintings during the Cubist period. While Violin and Candlestick is not a literal collage, the fractured forms and layered composition echo the collage aesthetic, demonstrating Braque's innovative approach to materials. This work is part of the period known as analytic cubism, characterized by the dissection and analysis of forms. It represents a stage in the development of Cubism where artists sought to break down objects into their essential geometric components. The fractured forms and abstract representation encourage contemplation and interpretation, inviting the viewer to actively participate in deciphering the composition. As the eye navigates the intersecting planes and fragmented forms, the viewer encounters a visual puzzle that challenges conventional ways of seeing. Violin and Candlestick showcases Braque's pioneering role in the development of Cubism. Through the deconstruction and reassembly of objects, Braque not only transformed the visual language of art but also challenged viewers to rethink their perceptual habits. The painting exhibits the discipline and creative ingenuity that characterized the Cubist movement in the early 20th century.